right, kiddos. Chapter 8, one of my absolute favorites. It's titled We Capture the Flag, and it's on page 107. The next few days, I settled into a routine that felt almost normal, if you don't count the fact that I was getting lessons from satyrs, nymphs, and centaurs. Each morning, I took ancient Greek with Annabeth, and we talked about the gods and goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird. I discovered Annabeth was right about my dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for me to read, at least no harder than English. And after a couple of mornings, I could stumble through a few lines of Homer without too much of a headache. The rest of the day, I'd rotate through outdoor activities looking for something I was good at. Kieran tried to teach me archery, but I found out pretty quickly I wasn't good with a bow and arrow. He didn't complain even when I had to de-snag the arrow out of his tail. Foot racing, nope, not good at that either. The wood nymph instructor left me in the dust. They told me not to worry about it. They'd had centuries of practice running away from lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliating to be slower than a tree. And wrestling, forget it. Every time I got on the mat, Clarice would pulverize me. There's more where that came from, punk, she'd mumble in my ear. The only thing I really excelled at was canoeing, and that wasn't a kind of heroic skill people expected to see from the kid who had beaten the Minotaur. I knew the senior campers and counselors were watching me, trying to decide who my dad was, but they weren't having an easy time of it. I wasn't as strong as the Aries kid or as good at archery as the Apollo kids, and I didn't have the Hephaestus' skill of metalwork, or God forbid Dionysus' way with a vine plant. Luke told me I might be a kid of Hermes, a jack of all trades, but master of none. But I got the feeling he was just trying to make me feel better. He really didn't know what to make of me either. And despite all that, I kind of liked camp. I got used to the morning fog over the beach and the smell of the hot strawberry fields in the afternoon, and even the weird noise of the monsters in the woods at night. I would eat dinner with Cabin 11 and scrape part of my meal into the fire and try to feel some connection to my real dad. But nothing came. Just the warm feeling I'd always had, like the memory of his smile. I tried not to think too much about my mom, but I kept wondering if gods and monsters were real, if all this magical stuff was possible. Surely there's some way to save her and bring her back. I started to understand Luke's bitterness and how he seemed to resent his father Hermes. So, okay, maybe gods had important things to do, but then couldn't they call once in a while, or thunder, or something? Dionysus could make a cook appear right out of thin air. Why couldn't my dad, whoever he was, make a phone appear? Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I arrived from Camp Half-Blood. Can't believe it's only been 3 days, right? It feels like he's done so much. So Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I arrived at Camp Half-Blood, I had my first sword fighting lesson. Everybody from Cabin 11 gathered in the big circular arena where Luke would be our instructor. We started with basic stabbing and slashing using our straw-stuffed dummies in Greek armor. And I guess I did okay. At least I understood what I was supposed to do, and my reflexes were pretty good. The problem was I couldn't find a blade that just felt right in my hand. Either it was too heavy or too light or too long. And Luke tried his best to fix me up, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for me. We moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced he would be my partner, since this was my first time. Good luck, one of the campers told me. Luke's the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Maybe he'll go easy on me, I said. The camper snorted. Luke showed me thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. With every swipe, I got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, he'd say, and then whop me in the ribs with the flat of his blade. No, not that far up. Whop, lunge, whop. Now back, whop. Ow, doesn't sound very fun. By the time he called a break, I was soaked in sweat. Everybody swarmed the drink coolers. Luke poured ice water on his head, which looked like such a good idea. I just decided to do the same. And instantly I felt better. Strength surged back into my arms, and the sword didn't feel so awkward anymore. Okay, everybody circle up, Luke ordered. If Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you all a little demo. Great, I thought. Let's all watch Percy get pounded. The Hermes guys gathered around, and they were suppressing smiles. I figured they'd been in my shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used me for a punching bag. I told everybody he was going to he told everybody he was going to demonstrate a disarming technique. How to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword, so he had no choice but to drop his own weapon. This is very difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on me in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of my hand. Now, in real time, he said, after I retrieved my weapon, we keep sparring until one of us pulls it off. Are you ready, Percy? I nodded. Yeah, I think Percy is not feeling super confident in his skills right now. So I nodded, and Luke came after me. Somehow I kept him from getting a shot at the hilt of my sword. My senses opened up, and I saw his attack coming. I countered, and I stepped forward and tried a thrust of my own. Luke deflected it easily, but I saw a change in his face. His eyes narrowed, and he started to press me with more force. The sword grew heavy in my hand, and the balance wasn't right. I knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took me down, so I figured, what the heck, I'll give it a try. I tried the disarming maneuver. My blade hit the base of Luke's, and I twisted, putting my whole weight into a downward thrust, and clang! Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of my blade was inches from his undefended chest. The other campers went silent. I lowered my sword. Sorry? For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry? His scarred face broke into a grin. By the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me that again. I didn't want to. That short burst of manic energy had completely abandoned me, but Luke insisted. This time there was no contest. The moment our swords connected, Luke hit my hilt and sent my weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, that was just beginner's luck, Percy. Luke wiped the sweat off his brow. Maybe, he said, but I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword. That was kind of interesting that he was able to take Luke down. So Friday afternoon, I was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall, and Grover had scampered to the top like a mountain goat, but the lava had almost gotten me. My shirt had smoking holes in it. The hairs had singed off my forearm. We sat on the pier, watching the naiads do underwater basket weaving, until I got up the nerve to ask Grover how his conversation had gone with Mr. D. His face turned a sickly shade of yellow. Fine, he said. Just great. So your career's still on track? I asked Grover. He glanced at me nervously. Kieran told you I wanted a searcher's license? Well, no, I had no idea what a searcher's license was, but it didn't seem like the right time to ask. Well, he just said you had big plans, and that you needed credit for completing a keeper's assignment. So did you get it? Grover looked down at the naiads. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said I hadn't failed or succeeded with you yet. So our fates were still tied together. If you got a quest and I went along to protect you, and we both came back alive, then maybe he'd consider the job complete. And my spirits lifted. Well, that's not so bad, right? Blah. That's my attempt at a goat sound. He might as well be transferred me to the stable cleaning duty. The chances of you getting a quest, and even if you did, why would you want me along? Well, of course I'd want you along, Grover. Grover stared glumly into the water. Basket weaving must be nice to have a useful skill. I tried to reassure him that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. We talked about canoeing and swordplay for a while, and then debated the pros and cons of different gods. Finally, I asked him about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, that belongs to Artemis, he said. She vowed to be a maiden forever, so of course, no kids. The cabin is, honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, okay, but what about the other 3? The ones on the end. Are those the big 3? Grover tensed. We're getting close to a touchy subject. No, one of them, number 2, is Hera's, he said. That's another honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Cronus. So Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades? Right, after the great battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots to decide who got what. Oh yeah, Zeus got the sky, I remembered, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Uh-huh. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here? No, he doesn't have a throne on Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. If he did have a cabin here, Grover shuddered. Ooh, well, it would be unpleasant. Let's just leave it at that. But Zeus and Poseidon, they both had like a bazillion kids and myths. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his hooves uncomfortably. Well, about 60 years ago, after World War II, be careful, this is where your question's coming along, so pay attention carefully. So about 60 years ago, after World War II, the big 3 agreed they would not sire any more heroes. That means they wouldn't have any more kids. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much death or carnage. World War II, that is basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them. No more affairs with mortal women. And they all swore on the river Styx, and thunder boomed. I said, that's the most serious oath you can make. Grover nodded, and the brothers kept their words. No kids. And Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon, and there was this TV starlet with a big fluffy 80s hairdo, and he just couldn't help himself. When their children were born, they named the girl Thalia. Well, the river Styx is serious about promises. Zeus himself got off easy because he's immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. Percy, children of the big 3 have power greater than any other half-blood. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't happy about Zeus breaking their oath. Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torture Thalia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her with a couple other half-bloods she'd befriended. They almost made it. They got all the way to the top of the hill. He pointed across the valley to the pine tree where I'd fought the Minotaur. All three kindly ones were after them, along with a horde of hellhounds. They were about to be overrun when Thalia told her satyr to take the other two half-bloods to safety, while she held off the monsters. She was wounded and tired, and she didn't want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but he couldn't change her mind, and he had to protect the others. So Thalia made her final stand alone on the top of that hill. As she died, Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into a pine tree. Her spirit still helps protect the borders of the valley, and that's why they call it Half-Blood Hill. I stared at the pine in the distance. The story made me feel hollow and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, my victory over the Minotaur didn't seem like much. I wondered if I'd had acted differently. Could I have saved my mother? Grover, I said, have heroes really gone on quests to the underworld? Sometimes, he said. Orpheus, Hercules, Houdini. And have they ever returned somebody from the dead? No, never. Orpheus came close. Percy, you're not seriously thinking. No. I lied. I was just wondering, so like a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod? Grover studied me. I hadn't persuaded him that I'd really dropped the underworld idea. Not always. We go undercover a lot to schools. We try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. If we had one with a very strong aura, like a child of the Big Three, we alert Huron. He tries to keep an eye on them, since they could cause really big problems. And you found me? Huron said, you thought I might be something special. Grover looked as if he'd led me into a Grover looked at me, looked as if I just led him into a trap. I didn't. Oh, listen, don't think like that. If you were, they'd never let you, you'd never ever be allowed a quest. And I'd never get my license. You're just probably a kid of Hermes, or maybe even one of the minor gods, like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay? I got the idea he was reassuring himself more than me. Okay, so we're going to stop there. What I want you to do is you're going to go to your Google Classroom. Your question today is going to be, what oath did the Big Three make? So what did the Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades all promise each other? Alrighty, guys, have a great afternoon. Talk to you later.